Alright, so what I'm going to tie here is known as the Silver Smelt. It's actually one of the easiest flat wing patterns that you can do. I mean, there's just not a lot to it. What I have in the vise is a size 4 TMC 300. It's a ×6 long. And you'll notice that my hook is angled slightly up, and that's just to help build the head at the end. It'll help keep the thread from slipping down over the eye. So what I'm going to start with here is I've just got some UTC 70 white. And I'm just going to start my thread about where I want to start. I want to start my thread about at the back of the head, where I want to put the back of my head. So this is going to be about 2.5, 3 bodkin width, something like that behind the eye. And once I've got this secured on, I'm going to go ahead and trim out my tag right up front. The key to the nice body here, because we are going to be using mylar tinsel for the body, is to have flat wraps that are either completely touching all the way down to build a nice underbody, or if you can open your thread up to get it to lay flat, you can spiral wrap this back, and it doesn't seem to affect it too much. You want to make sure that thread is super flat. No, if you're having a hard time seeing it on the camera, that's how flat you need to have it in real life. And I'm going to take it back to about the hook point. So next what we're going to do is we're actually going to do the body. So what I have here is just some small silver tinsel. And I'm going to pull off, probably 8 to 10 inches or so. Enough so I can handle it all the way up easily. And let me get that trimmed here. There we go. Alright. Should have had that pre-cut. But anyway, so I've got silver on one side and gold on the other. We're going to be using the silver side, so in order to tie this in right, we want to tie the silver side to the hook shank. We're going to tie it away from us on the opposite side. So I'm just going to place this in, and I'm going to wrap back to about the halfway point between the barb and the hook, like so. I'm going to put this in my clip. There we go. Now for the actual body part itself, if you want to have this protected because it doesn't have a wire rib or anything, you could use just a little tiny bit of crazy glue or super glue and brush it along the hook shank. There's other glues you could use, very, very little amount. What I like to do for working time purposes, though, is just use some of the Sally Hansen's double duty. It's like their base coat stuff and like a top coat kind of deal for fingernails. I'll just put a little bit on, and I'm going to kind of wipe that off a little bit, dab it. Okay, now I'm going to bring my thread up, this time using touching turns to help build that underbody. And I do this part twice, not the wrapping, but the actual application of the glue or whatever. Since I've spiral wrapped it back, I like to get that thread locked down with a little glue or varnish, and then also come back and put just a touch more on top of the new thread base to protect the mylar. And we're going to take this thread all the way back up to where we started. Okay. I'm going to do it again. And this time, this part will help protect the actual mylar. Okay. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of pull my Mylar tinsel forward to kind of put a little bit of a bend into it. I'm going to lift it up and then wrap over, and that should bring your silver side out. I'm going to put two basically on top of each other in the back, and then I'm going to start working forward. What I'm looking to do is, see if I can get a nice shot of it, have about 50-50 split, so 50% on the lead side or the front side is down on the shank, and then the other 50% is on the back part, covering it up, covering up the gaps. And I try not to pull too tight. If I pulled too tight, you can see actually it happened right there. It'll kind of kink on you a little bit. And the only way to get it out is to go back and undo it. Oh, there we go. It kind of undid itself on that one. It shot forward for me. Okay. So even, but not crazy. Now the reason I like to use white thread back here is if I do happen to get a gap in there, I don't like the black thread showing through the gap. If you're not used to wrapping these kind of bodies, you may want to avoid putting the glue down at first. You just have to kind of take your time working it up. Takes a little patience to do this part. Bumped my light. If you got a rotary vise, you could actually, what you could do too, is you could put a whip finish in right here and use your rotary function to crank this thing forward. And this part's just not wanting to cooperate. There we go. There we go. You could also, I guess, if you wanted to, use some UV resin or something on the outside of it to protect it. Alright, we are almost up front. I'm going to cross on the front side of my thread and then place some wraps over to lock it down. Now I'm going to reverse the Mylar to the back. It doesn't matter which side is showing at this point. I'm going to put in 2 or 3 more turns, or 4 there, I guess, heading to the back. And what that does is that creates that little V wedge and ties that all down with kind of minimal wraps. And then I'm going to work my thread forward until I've got just about a bodkin width behind the eye. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change colors, but we're going to do it on the fly. If you don't have 2 bobbins that you can run on the fly, what a pun. If you don't have 2 bobbins you can that you have handy, you can tie off your white thread here and then just attach your black thread. What I like to do is go ahead and attach my black thread behind the eye. And then I start to work back onto the white thread. I'll grab both of them and I'll lift both tags up and I'll tie both tags in for where my head's going to go, like so. And I'll trim that out. And now I'm on to my new thread color. And just to secure it, I want to add some super glue. There we go. And I'll go just another turn or 2 to the back. And I'm going to work back forward, locking all that super glue in, and starting to build the taper to the head. We want to start our taper just a little bit. Okay. Next, we're going to put in the throat. And so what I'm going to use here is I've just got a red saddle hackle that came from a pack of strung saddles. And I'm going to come through and I'm going to get, probably a ½ inch worth or so. And we trim that part out. I don't need that. I ended up pulling a little too much there. Alright. So you have something about like this. I'm going to turn the vise over. It's the easy way to do it. And I'm going to place it so that my throat's going about halfway back down the hook shank. I want to pinch loop that in, pinch wrap it in. And then I can take my thumb and kind of spread it around a little bit if I need to. Okay, if I got any crazies, I can pluck them out. Next, I'm going to come in and I'm just going to trim out from behind the eye. And then what I'll do is I'll lick my fingers and try to gather as much of that together as possible. I'm going to trim that again, just to help it stay together as I'm tying it in. There we go. Now, I'm just going to start wrapping this guy forward. And nice even touching turns. I'm going to come back. I'll do it one more time just to help build the shape and make sure I've got all that red trapped down. Oh, a little fuzzy or something on the thread. Okay. So it should be about like that. Next, what you need is some gray hackle. What I've got here is just a dyed rooster neck in gray. Now ideally you're going to take 2 feathers from the left and 2 feathers from the right, and then you're going to pair them up so that the concaved parts of the feathers are facing each other like this. So you get the lip, makes it look like there's a little eye in there. Now when you do this, all this stuff down here at the bottom can kind of get in the way. So what I do is I line these up as close as I can get them, and then I come in and I trim out everything that I don't need down below, and kind of pull some of this away just so I can handle the stems a little bit. There we go. So about like that. The next I'm going to find out where I want them situated. And you may have to play around with these a little bit to get them to sit next to each other right, and everything. If you're not used to tying in 4, just try tying in 2. Now that I've got my distance, I'm going to go ahead and strip all that stuff off. There we go. Now I'm going to place them. I want my thread at the back. I'm going to place these right on top with my hook shank, and I'm going to do 2 loose turns. Make sure I still have them, and I'm going to gently pull down just to kind of hold them in place. And I'm going to do 2 more turns going forward, and it should be enough pressure to hold everything in place, and you should be able to turn it to the side. Now you want this, you want your feathers running right along the hook shank as best as possible, so that they're sitting like this. You can, if they're laying super flat or super low, you can kind of take your thumbnail, pinch, and then lift to help give them a little bit of an incline. But when you do that, you got to be careful because it can mess up the feathers pretty bad. So we just want to make sure that we're all lined up. The next what I want to do is I'm just going to slowly start to wrap forward, and with each wrap I'm going to start adding a little more pressure, or making my wraps a little bit tighter as I'm coming forward. Part of the goal here is so we don't have to come back and wrap up, unless you want to make your head bigger or something like that. So I'm going to come in, actually I'm going to take my fingernail clippers to do this, and I'm going to trim these out just behind the eye, right about here. And then I'm going to finish tying them in. You want to try to get them fairly straight when you do this. Just like so. I think I'm going to come back and make one more pass. I think I want my head to be just a little bit bigger. So I'm going to build up the bulk in the back just a fuzz, get more of a cone shape to it, or a taper to it. Okay, there we go. And you can see how my thread there is flat. The flatter your thread, typically the better on this. Until you get to this part where we're going to do the whip finish, and I'll take it, I'll spin up my bobbin to get a little rope going there. And we will whip finish. I'm just going to put 4 in and pull it tight. All right, and that's it. That's how you tie the silver smelt. Now, if I remember correctly, originally they used to do some like little painted epoxy eyes on there. You could do that too if you wanted. Get some like model paint or something like that, and some white fingernail polish or something. Paint some eyes on there. I'm just going to leave this blank or without eyes. But what I am going to do is I'm going to finish off the head to give it some protection. So you could use black lacquer. You could use some black fingernail polish. You can use just some regular super glue. You can use some, I'm going to use some Solar Res here in a minute. Or you could go back to this, like something like a Sally Hansen's product. All will work for this, but what this does is it helps shape the head a little bit more, and offers protection for it. So I'm just going to get my drop on there. Oh, that might be too much. Got a bunch of stuff on there. All right. And let me make sure you don't go back into the feathers and goop those all up. So I like to take my bodkin. That's one of the reasons I like the Solar Res on this. So I can kind of dictate a little bit better where it's going. Just maneuver it around until you have it in place. Get my light. Okay. I'm going to just go slow. Excuse me. So there you go. That's how you tie the Silver Smelt. Pretty easy little smelt pattern to do. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. That would be awesome. Also, subscribe to my channel if you haven't. That would be cool too. You can always check us out over at Fly Tying for Beginners on Facebook and all the different stuff we have going on over there. This is actually one of the videos for some of the classes that we do over there. Yeah, answer the 4 questions, and that's your golden ticket in to the Facebook group. And other than that, happy tying. Talk to you later.